environment. I am going to pick over in this corner, in this quarter, I'm going to pick the position of Arnie Ness or Rachel Carson, and I'm going to argue for deep ecology. Deep ecology. And then, do you know what? Because she's a previous speaker at the men's conference in Beckwourth, I thought for this position, I'm going to use the arguments of Catherine Jeffert-Shorey. There you go, the presiding bishop. And then over here, do you know, I played back and forward with different people as possible representatives. So I want you to be very gentle in this position and not decide that just because I picked Rush Limbaugh, that's either a reason in favour or against. You're just to hear his arguments, okay? And hear them as he presents them, and judge them on the basis of the arguments, not on the source. But the three positions that we're looking at are on the issue of the environment, the environmental anxiety, this is the position of Rush Limbaugh, is another mechanism of the left to try and control us. That's the position there. This position is the position of deep ecology, which says we've got to get beyond shallow ecology, which is where we worry about the environment to ensure that humans can survive, and start recognizing that the rest of creation has rights. And we need to commit to a radical reorganization of our values so we give space to the rest of creation to breathe. And then this position is the position that says the major issue facing us in 2020 is the environment, and with it in particular climate change. So let's start with the centre position. And I'm Catherine Jeffert-Shorey, who is, as you know, a biologist of some, marine biologist, I think, with a doctorate, who has been a constant and consistent in her witness for the environment. So, of course, so I am a trained scientist. And let's just start there. You know, one weird thing about America today is we are very, very critical of intellectuals. There's a sort of deliberate denial of what intellectuals want to say and what they're witnessing to. And that's damaging America. You know, instead, people are opting for sources that are unreliable. They find a text, they find a website, they believe it. The conspiracy is that the truth is that there's no climate change, even though every major scientific organization which is reputable, every single major university which is reputable, has in its midst those who are saying, look, there's a significant problem facing this planet of ours, and we've got to start waking up to that problem. And the problem, to put it bluntly, is that one of the great joys of the great American experiments, one of the great achievements of the great American experiment, has been this vast expansion of productivity and production, and with it factories and cars. And as a result of these things, we live in a time when, because of carbon dioxide emissions, we're in a situation where those emissions are lingering in our atmosphere such that the planet, as a result, is getting warmer. Now, that does not mean that the weather's constantly getting warmer, although over the last 10 years, the temperatures of the planet have been higher than ever before. But it does mean that we're going to see climatic extremes, and that's what's happening. We're in a situation where the hurricanes are more common, the tornado is more common, flooding is more common, and sea levels are rising such that the Beckwourth is unlikely to survive 100 years. So this is the reality, and the thing about climate change is the damage is, of course, for those who are least able to cope. If you have resources, sure, you can relocate yourself to other parts of the United States, other parts of the globe, and you will be safe. But if you don't have resources, you are in trouble. And the people who are going to be suffering most from the consequences of the environmental damage we're inflicting on our planet will be people in 2/3 developing countries, in Africa and in Asia. And as a result of that, you will see refugee crises grow and explode, and as a result of that, you'll see instability. So it all goes back to how we're handling the environment, and the environment is a place where you need to learn to understand that we're small and the environment's big. And the environment is not easily to change back. So we need to be intentional by thinking about our lifestyle. And we can do these things, but we've got to do them now. We can't carry on lingering. And that does mean we need to move away from coal production. We need to move away from carbon-based fuels. We need an environment where we're more dependent on renewable energy. We need to incentivize the putting of solar panels on every house in Alabama, and then everybody would have cheap electricity in their homes. You need to incentivize the placing of electric charging stations rather than gas stations. Just imagine a vision where you have the state of Alabama with solar panels on every single home, reducing all the utility bills of those homes, and then add to that home an electric charging socket and incentivize the purchase of Chevy Volts. You would then have a situation where sunshine powers your car. Now, why not go for that? Is it really beyond the wit and imagination of Americans to just say, that's a vision? Why denigrate it? Why be so fearful? Why deny the science? Why not listen to those in authority? Why not just do it? Do you know, I get tired of those sort of speeches. I hear them all the time. Did you notice what the theme was? For our sake, for humanity's sake, we need to start treating the environment more kindly. Do you know what that's called? That's just an old-fashioned anthropomorphic prejudice. You know, there's a name for it. You've heard of sexism, you've heard of racism. Okay, I'll give you a new word. Peter Singer invented it. It's called speciesism. It's when you start saying the only species that matter is humans, and as provided we're okay, nothing else matters. Why are humans so important? We're relative late inhabitants of this planet Earth. You know, for centuries, for millennia, we weren't around. And, of course, in the natural order of things, we won't be around. No species has survived forever, save the cockroach and a couple of bugs. You know, we all come and go. So why are we so elitist? Why are we so arrogant? Why do we have the hubris to imagine that in the end we're the only ones who matter? And do you know, population has been devastating. For centuries, the planet was virtually empty, and when it was empty, humans could function on it fine. Do you know what the population was in 1950? 2 billion people. Do you know what the population is now? Almost 7.75 billion. And do you know what we do when humans multiply in these ways? Well, we pave half all the fields. We stick cement and concrete down. We actually create a mechanism that destroy over 1,000 species a year are destroyed by human habitation and activity. We demolish trees. We have no respect for rivers or mountains. So the time's come to get away from this shallow ecology. I loathe it. I loathe them more than I loathe them. I mean, in the end, you've got to get away from that sort of shallow ecology. You need deep ecology. Deep ecology is the position that says everything has rights. And the time has come for humans to start making space for other species, and not just species, rivers, mountains, forests, trees, plants. We've just got to start recognizing that this world of ours never belonged to ours, and it's not for ours to use. We need to just get over that attitude. It's wicked. We've got to get over this prejudice, speciesism. Almost everybody you meet is a speciesist. And we need to start challenging that prejudice and calling it for what it is, a straightforward prejudice. Lordy, lordy, lordy. Do you know what? In the end, the left can't cope with people being free. And what they do is they have a variety of strategies to try and find little prisons we've all got to live in. The current strategy is to talk endlessly about the environment. Because the great thing about the environment is it's all science, apparently. Science. Now, do you know, anybody who's over 60 here will remember that in the 1950s, now you have to be a bit older than that to be remembering 1950s, skip that number, but nevertheless, in the 1950s they were all worried about a deep freeze in an ice age. That was the big anxiety. Now, apparently science is telling us uncomplicatedly it's going to be global warming. You know, you're going to always treat these experts with some skepticism because these are fashions, they come and go. You know, they say one thing at one time and they'll say something else next. You've got to look at what's the motive driving this stuff. And the motive is this. They, in the end, can't cope with humans being free. Do you know, this anxiety about population, that's now been around for over 100, 200 years. It was Malthus originally who had this anxiety about population. There he was studying, incidentally, a Church of England priest. You know, they're a disaster, priests, especially Anglican ones. There he was sitting down and he said to himself, oh my goodness, you know, by the 20 years, the population will outstrip food growth. And do you know what happened? The opposite. We've actually got more food on planet Earth now than ever before, and poverty has fallen more than ever before. You know, the truth is that because of human imagination and human energy and human creativity, we find ways of actually surviving that are very compelling. And, do you remember in the 1950s, the water was all dirty? What solved that? It was technology. Technological innovation will overcome most of the environmental worries that people have. Sure, we need to be in an environment where air is clean and water is clean. That's important. And technology will solve those problems. You know, the future is rosy. And these alarmists, apocalyptic alarmists, you need to resist that sort of talk. Because what's underpinning it is, I want to regulate your life. I want to create a little prison in which you can't move. I want to deny your freedom. It's the left's latest strategy to impose socialism on us. So just push back on it. Now, I think it's very important we use the language of faith. And as Catherine Jefferts-Schori, the language of faith is clear. In the Genesis narrative, we're given some responsibility for the world. That's what is meant by the moment when Adam has the opportunity to name the animals. That is a sense of responsibility for the world. And we should take seriously concerns around species disappearing, because, of course, you never know which species or which plant that you're eradicating might be the secret to a vaccine for a pandemic in the future. You want to make sure there's eco-diversity in our world. You want to make sure, and our survival might well depend on these things. Sure, technology will help. But it is a technology that needs to work to change the world and our attitudes to the world. We need to appreciate that actually you can't be sanguine with the environment, because you will see more climatic weather crises occurring. And there is dear Rush living right down in the south of Florida, in a part of Florida which will not be in 50 years or 60 years' time. They won't be able to insure property on the coast. That will be a real issue as these weather events occur. So we have lots of good reasons, economic reasons, for wanting a different world. And I go back to it. Is it really that bad to imagine a solar power industry emerging in Alabama, solar power panels on every home, and an electric charger, giving people the capacity to lower their utilities and reduce. Now, of course, who will squeal? Oh, yeah, there'll be plenty of squealing. All the coal-produced power plants will squeal about the fact that electricity is no longer being purchased by them. Oil companies will squeal at the prospect of cars not being petrol-driven. But the rest of the world is making decisions. Boris Johnson, he's not exactly a socialist, has just announced that gas-driven cars will no longer be purchased in the United Kingdom from 2035 onwards. Every car you want to buy new will have to be electric. If the Tories can do it over there, then surely the Republicans can do it here, even in Alabama. Did you notice how the argument was made? She said you worry about species because that might have the ingredient for coping with a human pandemic. Look, this is a moral issue. She invoked Genesis 1. I invoke the principle of justice, a biblical theme. We need to start saying trees have rights, rivers have rights, animals have rights. We need to start saying there is as much right to be as we have a right to be. Look, everything has a right. Every living entity has a right. The AIDS virus has a right to be. This is just incoherent nonsense. And you can't say a carrot and a dog and a human are all morally equivalent. You can't say I've got to acknowledge carrot rights and dog rights and human rights and they're all comparable. Of course, human rights matter more. That's just confused theology. And we need to recognize that if you listen carefully to the witness of Scripture, it is clear that humans have been given this world in which we can flourish, and we should use the resources of the world for our well-being. And we shouldn't ask present generations to suffer for a hypothetical future which might never come to be. So turn to your neighbour. Decide. Where are you going to walk in just a moment?